Hi, my name is Lucas Matson, and this is going to be a response post to Gerard Burke and his position that the US should have dropped nuclear weapons on Japan. And I'm just going to go through all of the reasons one by one that he listed for in favor of dropping nuclear weapons, and I'm going to respond to them one by one. So one of the first things that he says is that a reason for dropping the nuclear weapons was in response to the unprovoked attack on Pearl Harbor, to which I would say that that's a very vindictive statement, and that I think that in no way justifies dropping nuclear weapons, but I think that's one of my weaker responses. And then he goes on to say that this dropping nuclear weapons was the only response that could bring a swift and total end to the war. And this simply was not true. I go over this more in my own video on why the US shouldn't have dropped nuclear bombs, but it actually the Japan did not surrender because of the nuclear weapons. They actually surrendered because of the sudden Russian involvement in the war. The day before Japan surrendered, Russia had retaken Manchuria and other Japanese territories and had declared war on Japan, which was in intercepted telegrams from the Japanese emperor was their ultimate reason for surrendering. It was not nuclear weapons. Um, and the U.S. generals knew this. 7 out of the 8 U.S. generals, including Dwight D. Eisenhower, opposed using the bomb. They knew that it was useless. They knew that Nagasaki and Hiroshima, they were full of women, children, and old people. They were not military targets. Most of the men were away fighting in the war, and that this would all be very superfluous given that the Russians had entered the war. There had been intercepted Japanese telegrams from the emperor. I think I already mentioned this, stating that they were simply looking for a way to surrender without having the emperor tried and killed for war crimes. They were just needed a little time to save face, but they were ultimately going to surrender in August, around when the bombs were dropped. So there's that. He then goes on to say the dropping of nuclear weapons prevented additional and a greater number of casualties from occurring. This is also not true. The man who came up with that figure, that million lives figure, was named Kai Bird, and oh wait, no, it wasn't Kai Bird. No, Sherman said that, or Sherwin. And this man named Kai Bird said this figure was never given to Truman or bandied by Stimson. Bird told the audience, I asked McGeorge Bundy about it, and he sheepishly admitted that he chose the $1 million figure or 1 million live figure because it was a nice round figure. He pulled it out of thin air. So that was just totally made up. It was not based in any science and any projections, anything like that. It was more just for show. Um, and then he goes on to say that Gerard goes on to say that this was a preemptive strike, that Japan had their own nuclear program. I think that that's ridiculous, given that Japan couldn't even defend from air raids. They certainly had no capability of delivering a nuclear weapon to American soil. So that's sort of ridiculous. Even if they did somehow develop a working nuclear bomb before the United States, they had no way of delivering that anywhere. Um, he then goes on to say that this ushered in an era of peace, that no global conflicts occurred after the use of nuclear weapons. And well, maybe no global conflicts occurred, but in the next decade, we then had Korea, then we had Vietnam, we had a host of proxy wars. The world was not a very peaceful place due to the use of nuclear weapons. If anything, it became much more dangerous the more that they were threatened and to be used. Then he goes on to say that the nuclear weapons were used as a display of power towards the Soviet Union in order to gain leverage and concessions. This is true, but this show of force was ultimately backfired on Truman and the United States as it kickstarted the Cold War. It really made Russia dive into its nuclear weapons program because they saw that the United States was using them. So they must develop their own very quickly. And so many would argue that the use of nuclear weapons on Nagasaki and Hiroshima jump-started the Cold War. The Cold War may have not even occurred without their use. Who knows? And then he goes on to say that the use of nuclear weapons justified the cost of the Manhattan Project. I think that's cruel, and that lives should not be used to justify the cost of anything. But that is my response post. The use of nuclear weapons was entirely not, it wasn't needed, especially with Japan already surrendering. That's what I talk about in my video. Should not have been used. Thank you.